Let's go. You're not living your life. You're living a script someone else wrote, and you've been performing it so long you think it's you, but it's not you. It's programming, it's conditioning, it's inherited beliefs, it's trauma responses masquerading as personality. It's every message you absorbed about who you should be, what you should want, how you should move through the world. Um, and none of it came from your actual essence. It came from parents who were doing their best but passed down their own wounds. It came from teachers who projected their limitations onto you. It came from culture that benefits from you staying small, staying confused, staying dependent. It came from media that sells you inadequacy, so you'll buy solutions. It came from religion that told you parts of yourself were wrong and needed fixing. All of this external input created a false self, a version of you built to survive, built to be accepted, built to not get hurt, but not built to be authentic, not built to be fulfilled, not built to be free. And that false self has been running the show for years, maybe decades, making decisions based on fear, not desire, based on should, not want, based on what's safe, not what's true. And you've been wondering why nothing feels quite right, why you're successful but not satisfied, why you're busy but not fulfilled, why you're surrounded by people but feel alone, why you're doing everything right but something's still missing. What's missing is you, the actual you underneath all the programming. That version exists, has always existed, is trying to surface, but the false self keeps pushing it down because the false self is scared. Scared that if the real you emerges, everything will fall apart. Um, and here's the thing, everything might fall apart, not because there's something wrong with the real you, but because the life you've built is designed for the false you. It's architected around pleasing others, meeting expectations, maintaining image. And if you start operating from authentic self instead of constructed self, that architecture doesn't hold. Relationships shift, careers change, priorities rearrange. Everything that was built on false foundation has to be rebuilt on true foundation. And that's terrifying. That's why most people never do it. They sense that authenticity requires destruction of what is, and they'd rather stay in familiar misery than face unknown authenticity. They'd rather keep performing than risk losing their audience. They'd rather stay safe than be real. But you're reading this for a reason. You're here for a reason. And the reason is you're done. You're so done with the performance. You're exhausted from maintaining the image, from playing the role, from pretending you're fine when you're not, from wanting things you're not supposed to want, from being who everyone needs you to be while forgetting who you actually are. Something in you is screaming for real, for true, for authentic, and it's getting louder, harder to ignore, impossible to suppress. And that screaming is your soul trying to get your attention, trying to tell you that this life, this version, this way of being isn't it, that there's more available, more aliveness, more joy, more meaning. But accessing it requires letting go of who you've been pretending to be. And that's the work. That's the deep work. That's what most people avoid forever. Let's talk about what false self actually looks like in practice. False self shows up as people pleasing, as saying yes when you mean no, as accommodating when you want to refuse, as making yourself smaller so others feel bigger, as suppressing your needs so others don't feel burdened. You've been doing this so long you don't even notice anymore. It's automatic. Someone asks, you agree. Someone needs, you provide. Someone's uncomfortable, you adjust. Someone's unhappy, you fix. You've made yourself responsible for everyone's emotional state except your own. You manage their feelings while ignoring yours. You protect their comfort while sacrificing yours. And you think that's love, that's kindness, that's being a good person. But it's not. It's self abandonment. It's betrayal of your own needs in service of others' wants. Um, and it's killing you slowly, not dramatically, just steadily, like a slow leak draining your life force. You're exhausted but don't know why. You're resentful but feel guilty about it. You're angry but have no target because you did this to yourself. You chose everyone else over yourself repeatedly until choosing yourself feels impossible, until you don't even know what you want anymore because you stopped asking. That's false self. That's the construct. That's what needs to die. Not through violence, through conscious choice, through starting to say no, through disappointing people, through letting them be uncomfortable, through reclaiming your energy from everyone else's needs and redirecting it toward your own. That feels selfish when you first do it, feels wrong, feels mean. But it's not. It's just unfamiliar. It's just different from the pattern. And pattern is not identity. You are not the pattern. You are the person underneath the pattern who's been waiting to emerge. False self shows up as perfectionism, as needing to be flawless before you're worthy, before you're acceptable, before you're lovable, as believing that if you just get it right enough, you'll finally be enough. But perfection isn't real, and chasing it ensures you never arrive. You're always falling short, always finding the flaw, always seeing what's wrong. You accomplish something and immediately focus on what's next. You achieve something and it's never quite enough, never quite right. You create something and can only see what's missing. You've been trained to see inadequacy, to focus on lack, to emphasize wrong. And that training serves a system that profits from your insecurity, from you buying solutions to problems they created, from you working harder, trying longer, doing more. But it doesn't serve you, it destroys you. It makes arrival impossible, makes satisfaction inaccessible, makes peace unattainable. You're running on a treadmill set to increase speed every time you adapt. And you think the answer is running faster, getting better, improving more. But the answer is getting off the treadmill, refusing the game, deciding that you're enough right now, exactly as you are, with all your flaws. That's not lowering standards, that's changing the metric. From external perfection to internal acceptance, from performance to presence, from becoming to being, that's the shift. And that shift is terrifying to false self because false self exists to achieve, to improve, to become acceptable. If you're already acceptable, false self has no purpose, no function, no reason to exist. So it fights, it creates new inadequacies to fix new ways you're falling short, new standards to meet, new hoops to jump through. It needs you lacking so it can keep existing. But you don't need it. You never did. You just believed you did because everyone else seemed to have that voice too. That inner critic that's never satisfied. That voice that says, not good enough. But that voice isn't truth. It's trauma, it's conditioning, it's learned. And what's learned can be unlearned. That voice can be questioned, challenged, dismissed. You can choose a different voice, a kinder voice, a truer voice. False self shows up as emotional suppression, as I'm fine when you're not, as smiling through pain, as pretending everything's okay, as pushing down feelings because expressing them is inconvenient for others, as not crying because it makes people uncomfortable, as not being angry because it's unattractive, as not showing fear because it's weakness, as not expressing joy because it's too much. You've been taught that your feelings are problems, that they're too much, too intense, too inconvenient, that other people shouldn't have to deal with them, that you should manage them privately and only show up when you're composed. So you stuffed them down, you compartmentalized, you dissociated, you became really good at not feeling, at staying in your head, at thinking instead of feeling. And that worked for survival, for getting through, for maintaining function. But it's not working anymore because unfelt feelings don't disappear. They accumulate, they build pressure, they leak out sideways as anxiety, as depression, as physical symptoms, as addiction, as numbness. Your body is screaming what your mouth won't say. And no amount of therapy, medication, or self help can fix it until you actually feel, until you stop running from emotions and turn toward them, until you create space for anger, sadness, fear, grief, all of it, until you stop judging feelings as good or bad and just let them be information, signals from your system about what's happening, what matters, what needs attention. Feelings aren't the problem. Suppression is. And you've been suppressing for so long you don't even know how to access feelings anymore. You know how to think about feelings, how to analyze them, how to explain them, but not how to feel them, not how to be in them, not how to let them move through. That's the work. Learning to feel again, learning to be with discomfort, learning that emotions won't destroy you, that crying won't kill you, that anger is information, not identity. False self shows up as external validation dependency, as needing others to confirm your worth, to approve your choices, to validate your existence, as checking likes, comments, responses obsessively, as needing to be seen to feel real, as making decisions based on what others will think instead of what you actually want, as living for audience instead of for self. You've been taught that your value comes from outside, from achievement, from approval, from recognition, that if people validate you, you matter. If they don't, you don't. So you perform, you curate, you present the version that gets positive response. You hide the parts that might get rejected. You emphasize the parts that get praised. You become a highlight reel instead of a human. And, and it's exhausting and it's empty because external validation is a drug that never satisfies. You get the like, the compliment, the recognition. It feels good for a moment. Then it fades, and you need more and more and more. You're chasing a feeling that can only come from inside, from knowing your own worth independent of others' opinions, from valuing yourself even when no one's watching, even when no one's applauding, from being okay with invisibility, with ordinariness, with not being special. That's freedom. That's authenticity. That's real self. Not needing external confirmation to know you're valuable, not needing others' approval to make choices, not needing validation to exist, just existing, just being, just living from internal compass instead of external metrics. That's the shift from performing for audience to living for self, from needing to be seen to being okay unseen, from external validation to internal knowing. False self can't survive that shift. It needs audience, needs validation, needs external. And real self doesn't need any of that. Real self just is content, complete, whole, not because everything's perfect, because wholeness isn't conditional, not because everyone approves, because approval isn't relevant, not because achievements validate, because existence is inherently valuable. That's the truth false self has been hiding from you. You're already worthy, already valuable, already enough, not because of what you do, because of what you are. Human, alive, aware, here. That's sufficient. That's complete. That's whole. Everything else is extra, is addition, is bonus. But you don't need extra to be worthy. You're worthy baseline. And once you really get that, once you internalize that, everything changes. You stop chasing, stop performing, stop proving. You just live from truth, from essence, from authentic self. And life becomes simpler, clearer, more aligned. Not easier necessarily, but more real, more meaningful, more yours. So here's what this reading is actually about. It's an invitation to question everything you think you know about yourself, to examine what's real versus what's learned, what's authentic versus what's performed, to start the process of deconstructing false self and discovering real self. That's not quick work. That's not easy work. That's lifelong work. But it's the most important work because it's liberation work. Liberation from others' expectations, from society's programming, from your own false beliefs. Liberation into authenticity, into alignment, into actually living instead of just existing. That's what's available, that's what's possible, that's what's calling you. And it requires courage, requires honesty, requires willingness to face what you've been avoiding, requires letting things fall apart that need to fall apart, requires disappointing people, requires changing course, requires saying, this isn't me anymore, requires admitting you don't know, requires asking for help requires being vulnerable. All the things false self was designed to avoid, all the things that feel dangerous, but they're not dangerous. They're doorways to real, to true, to free. And you're standing at the threshold right now, and you can turn back, go back to the script, keep performing. It's familiar.